didn't recognize you. Call this meeting to order. Please join us in the flag salute. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, please.
Please note for the record that all council members are present.
Okay, City Attorney, I want to report out from closed session, please.
He's not here yet.
Oh. In that case,
Can we wait till he comes for that one and just keep moving?
I guess we're running too fast for him, huh?
We
That's
are.
what we get for holding them back. Hey, come here, we need to ask you questions. Okay, we'll ask that later. Okay, so adoption of the agenda. Any additions, deletions, or otherwise?
I'd like to close in memory of Clay Holstein's mother.
Okay,
Yes, thanks.
memory of Clay's mother.
And for Maria's father.
Yep.
All right. Maria. Our HR director. Okay. With those changes, do I have
With that, I'll make a motion.
a motion and a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay, we have a operating menu here. So, City Attorney, you want to report out on closed session, please?
Mayor and Council, you had two items on for closed session, a claim from Gabor Zabo. And with respect to that matter, the council recommended approval of that claim in the amount of $1642.05, $1,642.05. The second matter was a claim of Ching Hu Chin, Chien, and the council made a motion to deny that claim, and that was unanimous.
Okay, very good. So we have oral communications number 1. This is for any item that is not on the agenda. And Dana Dilworth, I'm going to take questions in regards to the soil after the presentation. Do you want to withhold that till then? Only if it's not part of the presentation. How am I going to know that?
I'll need to speak during that presentation.
Okay, and that true with you, Michelle, or you want to speak now? Okay. But first slip. I'm sorry, Michelle. First slip I have is Nancy Loxamana. Okay.
Good evening, honorable council members. My name is Nancy Loxamana. I'm a Brisbane resident, and I want to let you know that my application was accepted to be a member of the Samtrans Citizen Advisory Committee, and I will have a full term through 2021, starting the end of this month. And I'm very excited to represent my fellow bus riders to improve upon services and promote more ridership, be it Samtrans, Caltrain, or the shuttle. As you know, my passion has always been working as a volunteer in our community and from a progressive point of view, supporting our town moving forward with the same core values that you all share: sustainability, the housing and transportation connection for a healthier town. My belief is that transportation is actually going to be the hot topic of the future. We need to work in ways to address the needs of all of our neighborhoods for residents or workers who are commuters, stay at home by choice or by need, and even our children. What we need more of is options in town to neighboring downtowns and especially to transit centers. We have work to do to make transportation a focus, whether they walk, bike, share rides, or use transit whenever possible. The key, of course, is ease of availability. That, I believe, is the biggest hindrance to most people. So with these thoughts in mind, I give you my promise that I will be an active CAC participant. I will bring to you important topics, and if I think we need your help to push our town's best interests, I will let you know so that you can reach out to the Samtrans Authority Board or management, many of which I know you know personally. I will also connect with Caroline to make sure the word gets out in the form of more communication. I know you're already doing that with the Get Us Moving survey and campaign. And I want to thank you, Mayor Conway, for your letter of support, my friend and fellow bus rider and also Citizen Advisory Committee member Sonny Koya of South San Francisco, and Anya Miller for her words of support. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Nancy, for
Nancy.
volunteering.
Nancy, if you could just, I just want to say thank you so much for stepping up to the plate and taking on that role. I also know that you've been quite active with trying to get that Samtrans route for our school children over to Pacifica. And if it's okay through the council, I'd love for you to give us an update on where we are with that.
Well, I was kind of a late person to the movement since my son's no longer in the school, but I was always active in trying to make sure we had transportation for the high school students. And from my understanding, we have a meeting this Monday at Samtrans, which I'm going to go to with a few of the other mothers and parents that you've all met with. And we really want to thank you, support. You started out in the 2x2. You're now on the 2x2. And from what I understand, they do have a solution. And it will be a Samtrans solution, which is the solution we should always have had. Because that is a public service. That is the authority that should be providing transportation. And I don't know the results of the meeting, but I'm hoping that it will also help the Bayshore School District pick up students if they choose Oceana and Terra Nova. I think it's a real win for this northern part of the area. It's going to be cheaper for parents. It's going to be more reliable. And I think it really solves a lot of issues for us.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so Nancy, on that meeting that's on Monday, is it Monday
This
the
Monday.
24th?
Yeah.
So I know it's at the Samtrans building in San
Correct.
Carlos.
Correct.
Do you know a time?
I want to say 1 or 2, but I'd have to.
My mic's off. It's at 1.
1 o'clock?
But you can call
Call
in.
Right.
I'm
Right.
planning. I don't. If I still can, I don't know. I was invited as well. I don't know if that would not be okay since it might be 3 of us. But
No, it won't be because I'm going to be I'm not going to be available Monday.
okay.
So-
Well, I was planning, provided that it was okay for me to give input. I might have to talk to the city attorney about that, but I was thinking about calling in for that, and it's at 1.
Yeah, I think I have a conflict, or I have a meeting that goes all the way to 1, someplace else. But then I could call in.
You
so,
can call in,
yeah.
right. No, I think as far as I know, it's going to be a very positive outcome. So that's very exciting.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Nancy.
Okay, Michelle.
Michelle Salmon, Brisbane resident. I'd just like to invite everyone to come on June 2nd to the Mountain Plant Sale at the Mission Blue Nursery. It's from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And I will have plants native for San Bruno Mountain. And we'll have a lecture at 11 o'clock called Flora of the Fog and how important fog is to the habitat on the mountain. But we have a lot of plants for sun, shade, fog, whatever you need. And although it's not the season to be planting out on the mountain anymore, in your yard and garden, it's the perfect time to plant. So come to the plant sale June 2nd. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Michelle.
Oh, almost forgot. There's these coupons out on the table, and they're worth $5 off. One
Oh, wow.
per family.
Oh,
It's a good value.
it's good.
Yeah.
Good you said the last part.
City taking the stacks.
Okay. Anybody else wish to address the council on any item that's not on the agenda? All right. Okay, Dan, come on forward.
Sorry to put you on the spot. I was going to make the announcement for you, but I was like, you probably know more information than I do.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Daniel Carter, Brisbane resident, and we are getting ready to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of G3. And we're going to do it Friday, June 1st at 5 o'clock, and it's going to be at Madhouse, and everybody in the city's invited. It's going to be a potluck, and it's going to be a great celebration, and we're going to have photos and show the before and afters, and we're very excited about it, and, thank the people that have contributed, included the city council. So it's going to be a really good time. So I'm hoping anybody's invited in town and, get the word out.
All right.
Nice.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
So June 1st and June 2nd, the months starting off with the
Plants.
Celebrations, huh?
Plants.
Yeah, plants, absolutely. Okay, good. So, anybody else want to address the council? Good to see our public works here, because you guys are up next, and gals. So, this is Public Works Week, so I have a proclamation here. It's a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Brisbane recognizing May 21st to the 27th as Public Works Week. This is the upcoming week. Whereas Public Works Week is a celebration of the dedicated employees who provide and maintain the infrastructures and services collectively known as public works. And whereas the theme of National Public Works Week 2018 is the power of public works, which gives voice to the impact the many facets of public works have on modern civilization. And whereas these impacts include the uninterrupted provision of clean water and disposal of solid waste, of building and repairing roads and bridges, of continuing care of natural and man-made environment, and of devising emergency management strategies to meet natural or man-made disasters. And whereas these critical services are provided daily by professionals who serve the public good with quiet dedication, and whereas it is in the public's interest for citizens and civic leaders to be informed of the substantial contributions made by public works to the health, safety, and quality of all our lives. Now therefore it be resolved that the City Council of the City of Brisbane does hereby proclaim May 21st to the 27th, 2018 as Public Work Week. All right.
Yeah.
Randy, I'm sure you'd like to add to this presentation because,
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. As unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, I'll give it a shot anyway. So we've talked before about public works people and what a special breed they are, and I think probably the best way to explain that is to tell a little story about an incident I observed not too many years ago, where we're at a small town a few hours south of here, and there were dueling conventions going on, as a lot of those communities are set up. And on one side of the street was a hotel that had public works people at a convention, and on the other side of the street, it just turned out to be a city manager's office convention. So there were the city managers, their deputies, their clerks, and a city attorney or two here. And one day, as they were breaking for lunch, the public works people were getting ready to go to lunch, the folks from the city manager's office that had been in a small session, and apparently it was a team building session, were walking out to the plaza in front of the convention center, and they had been given an assignment. And the assignment was to figure out how tall a flagpole was. Now, the instructor only gave them two tools to help them with this. He gave them a step ladder, a little two-step step ladder, and this was a tall flagpole. And he gave them a nice 30-foot tape. They thought it was nice, but it was one of those cheapo ones. You know, when you pull it out, you get it up about 2 feet, and then it wobbles over like a piece of string or wet spaghetti. So, you know, these poor people, these poor city managers, they're doing the very best they can. The public works folks are watching this, and they're out there, they're forming a human pyramid like cheerleaders. They're trying to lift people up on each other's shoulders, but they just can't get it. It just seems like an impossible task. So they finally notice the public works folks, and they're like, hey, you guys are public works. They're like, yeah, and they explain the dilemma to them, and they think, well, can you help us? And a couple of the public works folks walk over, and they're like, yeah, well, okay. Well, and they notice, they look at the bottom of the pole, that it's actually a breakaway pole. So there's a little locking device on it. They pull out, they kind of steady the pole, they pull a pin out, and then they lift the pole out, and they lay it down on the ground, and they say, we're going to need your tape measure. And they borrow it, and they bring it along, and say, well, your pole is 25 feet tall. And they lift the pole back up, put the pin through it, put the lock back on, and off they go to lunch. Well, they turn the corner and go to lunch, and the city manager's office is just, these folks are just bent over in tears. They're just laughing, and they can't stop themselves. And finally, one of them is finally able to stop and talk to his colleagues and says, isn't that just like a public works person? You ask them to tell you how tall something is, and they tell you how long it is. That's actually better. Normally that joke takes a little bit more time to travel to the back of the room. But public works folks do have to be flexible. I think most of the folks on the council and many of our citizens as well will remember back in the Great Recession of 2007, 2008, that we had just an awful amount of attrition just because of the economic situation. So the O&M folks, the folks back there in yellow, lime, and green, we lost 30% of that staff. We lost 40% of our engineering staff, and we had to completely re-envision and remodel how we deliver services and how we continue to make sure that the citizens of this city continue to live in what we consider first world conditions. And I'm incredibly prideful of the professionalism and the sense of ownership that the staff continues to do it. And I think it's really demonstrated with our citizens as well. Our citizens don't complain about what our public works people do. If anything, they complain that there's other things they'd like us to do. And I don't know if we're ever going to get back to that level of staffing, but we're certainly going to be doing our best as we continue to move forward to take care of our citizens. And we thank you very much for taking the time to recognize us and give us our own week every year.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. You know, it said it in the proclamation, but, you know, really you're the third leg of public safety. You know, because we have police and fire, and they're a little bit noisy and stuff like that, but you're the quiet leg of public safety. You're the one that keeps that stool upright, and a lot of people don't realize that. And so, you know, I really want to let you know that we do appreciate you, for sure. And I think the citizens do. You guys are the ones who really kind of are the face of the city in a sense, because you're always out there. And thank you very much for your hard work and your dedication. So, I mean, there's stuff you do that isn't on the agenda for the day, and you see a problem and you address it, and that's what's really special about Brisbane and what you guys do and gals. So, thank you very much. Anybody else?
Yeah, can I
Go
say
ahead.
something? Yeah, you guys, thanks so much. As a new city council person, I had an opportunity to go out with Dustin and a few other people on your team, and I really had no clue, even being on the planning commission for many years, exactly what your particular teams do on a day-to-day basis. And knowing that, you know, here we go up to the water towers and make sure that everything is running. Thank you so much. Every day, I mean, I had no clue, even though I was involved. And then going down to the poop station, as I call it. I don't know what you guys call it, but you know, just kind of knowing where things go and how they flow well is really a huge benefit to all of us. So that was such an eye-opener, you know, going out and looking around with you guys. So thank you so much for opening my eyes, and hopefully we can open the eyes of our citizens even more, knowing that, wow, you're checking the levels of pressure and this and that and things that, you know, we wouldn't be thinking on an everyday basis. But it's like we turn on the tap and there's the water. We flush the toilet and there it goes. But so might have been a little clumsy way of saying it, but thanks so much.
Cliff?
Yeah. Thank you so much for all that you do. I mean, you guys are awesome. You know, every day when I'm in town, I see one or two of you, and you know, give you a wave, but you're always busy doing something, and I'm just so impressed with all the things that you know. I mean, all of you are so incredibly smart, and besides just being really smart, you could just tell that you care so much about the work that you do. You have so much pride. You know, in our country, unfortunately, there's a lot of bad news, press, whatever, you know, about public employees, and that they're pork, or that they're, you know, that they don't, I don't know, they're not given the credit that they deserve. And I tell you, I mean, you guys, if we were to have a model of excellent employees that make a difference in all of our lives, you would be it. And again, I'm just really proud, you know, of all the work that you do, and thank you for making our town great.
Hard to follow up on that, but thank you all. I see you out working, and I just want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you.
I'll keep it brief as well. Of course, you know, we appreciate the work that you do every day, and I know sometimes it's hard after a long day that maybe people don't see the work that you do and how hard you work, and so it's really good for us to take time just to let you know how much we appreciate your service. And one of my favorite things about Public Works is how it doesn't seem to matter what the problem is. You guys get so creative in figuring out solutions. And I think Randy's story is the perfect type of example. That's just what the lifeblood of Public Works is you have a situation and you may have not ever encountered that situation before, but you get together and you put your minds together and you come up with really creative solutions that make a difference to all of us, even though I think sometimes we take that for granted. So thank you so much for the work that you do. Keep it up. And that's it for me.
Great, thank you. And, it's nice to see the next generation in here in the meeting also, so thanks for bringing your kids out too. So we're going to move forward to the next item on the agenda, which is item B, and you can stay if you like, or you can leave if you like. Okay. So.
Oh, come on, stay.
All right, thank you. Okay, item B, which is receive an update from Get Us Moving San Mateo County. Come on forward. How are you?
All right. This thing's easy to use, right? Oh, yes, it is. Okay. Well, good evening. Thank you for having me. Oops. My name is Matthew Wilson. I'm with the Get Us Moving San Mateo County Initiative. It's a little bit of an extra pleasure for me to be here because I was a journalist for 10 years, and I would cover so many city council meetings and sit in the back of the room. It was always kind of a wonder of what it would be like to address a council myself, and this is my first time doing it.
Oh, wow.
So it's off the bucket list in the next 9 minutes and 58 seconds.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Rite of passage.
Good thing you came to Brisbane then.
Yes, the big city of Brisbane.
Right.
So many of you probably remember that there was a Get Us Moving presentation to you by somebody earlier this year, probably in January, February.
Yeah,
and what I'm going to do you know who it was?
Corey.
Corey.
Corey Reebok, yeah.
I can't follow Corey, but I'm going to do the best I can. What we're going to do is give you a recap of Phase 1, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's going to happen in Phase 2. So, as a reminder, the Get Us Moving campaign is spearheaded by San Mateo County Transit District and the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors in collaboration with cities, agencies, and stakeholders. And long story short, it's all about getting information about a potential half-cent sales tax that could provide up to $80 million per year and would require 2/3 approval from county voters, and it could go on the November ballot. And the most important thing to realize is that it will only go to voters if the SamTrans Board and the County Board of Supervisors say so. Now we'll talk a little bit about Phase 1. And what we did during this time was we mailed out 140,000 surveys, we distributed 10,000 surveys by hand, and we had 4 town hall meetings that saw 120 participants. And we gave 50 presentations, similar to this, to multiple city councils, businesses, community groups, and civic groups. We also formed a stakeholder and technical advisory group and held many meetings. I believe your Public Works Director is on our technical advisory group. We also did TV, social media, we did polling data. A lot of work went into this. We were very, very thorough. And I got to say, we were blown away by the responses. We got 14,000 plus responses from people. This exceeded expectations, I'm told. And we definitely heard the transportation priorities of San Mateo County. And as you'll see as we go through this, there's a lot of consistent themes that we've noticed, whether it was through polling or through this process. And this is a fun little word cloud we had of a lot of the priorities and concerns that people had throughout this process. And through all the comments, each word and priority and concern was entered in, and this information was given to the stakeholder group and the technical advisory group. And not surprisingly, traffic is in big letters. Now, these are some of the top priorities we got from the survey process. And the thing to tell you about this part right here is that these are the top issues ranked. This is the number one that everyone gave. And the main component of this was to have people pick their top 5 priorities out of 12. And the chart shows what respondents listed as their number 1 priority. And right off the top, we see that traffic on highways, traffic on local streets, and potholes coming in as the top 3. And then if you look at some of these next ones, you can see that transit mobility, transit travel time, and transit for commuters, which are all public transit categories, if you take those all together, that shows it as also a very large priority. Now, what we also did is we weighted people's responses. So, for instance, we put a point value. People's number 1 priority was ranked with 5 points. People's number 2 was ranked with 4 points, and so on and so on. And while the chart only showed top priorities, you can see that the mean score incorporates all of these priorities. And regardless of the methodology which we used here, whether it's the top score or the mean score on both of these graphs, you can tell that traffic on highways, on local streets, pothole repair, and improved public transit are the key issues from the community. And these are some of the response numbers we got from all the cities, and as you can see, we were very thorough, and there was a lot of participation across the board, no matter which part of San Mateo County we went to. But the polling, or the gathering of information we got from surveys and from the website and from town halls is one thing, but we also did some scientific polling. And we polled last year and then again this year. And the margin of error was plus minus 3.04% and plus minus 4.3% for the split sample. And the split tested an ongoing tax versus a tax that sunsets in 30 years. And not surprisingly, there was a clear preference with voters for the 3-year sunset, and that is what we were moving forward with. And the data I will show you next is for a tax that sunsets in 30 years. So this gets a little wonky here, but this is an initial polling question, and what was done is pollsters asked essentially the same question last year and this year, and they simply asked a hypothetical ballot question. And we found that support for a half-cent sales tax for transportation funding increased from the polling done last year. And it was up to 74% from a mid-high of 60s last year. And as a reminder, this needs a 2/3 majority to pass. So being in that mid-60s area isn't quite where you want to be. 74% is a lot better. We also tested some positive messaging that would impact the support. And some of these positive messages were every penny of the measure will benefit local transportation projects and programs that cannot be taken away by the state, and our local streets are falling apart, and the measure will help stop the deterioration. And the polling brought out that after hearing these positive arguments, the support went up to 78%. We also tested with some negative arguments, and these are some classic anti-tax statements, and we were pretty hard on ourselves. We needed to see how it would fare even with a lot of strong negative messaging. And this also had a strong showing. I believe it was within the margin of error at about 71.6%. And much like the data and information we gathered during the phase 1 of the movement, we found that there are a lot of consistent themes yet again. Traffic on highways and local streets, potholes, and improved public transit, train, bus, shuttle, paratransit. This suggests that the ballot question that was tested in the survey is in line with resident priorities. And as I alluded to earlier, we did have 4 town halls. They were all throughout San Mateo County. We had one in early January at the San Mateo Library. We went to the coast side in Pacifica. We also went down to Menlo Park, and we went over to South City. And there were a lot of residents from Brisbane there, as I recall, because I was at that one. And again, same themes kept popping up that I've mentioned over and over again. Traffic on highways and local streets, potholes, transit improvements. But we also know there was a lot of regional issues or concerns. In Menlo Park, for instance, the Dumbarton corridor was a big issue. Out on the coast, potholes, but we also heard bus, bus, bus over and over again. And up north, there was an emphasis on smart transit and best practices. This is also a reminder of our stakeholder and technical advisory groups. There were over 70 organizations represented. We had monthly meetings. There were input tools online. Every city and county was represented on the technical group. There were monthly meetings to provide feedback, and over 12 billion unfunded needs were identified. Now we're on to phase 2, and this began a little bit last month, and it's really ramping up now. The reason I'm here tonight is because there's a lot of other people at another meeting tonight. So we're covering a lot of ground trying to get the word out about phase 2 here. And the key piece of phase 2 is our transportation budget challenge. And this is brand new on the Get Us Moving website. It's the same website you may have encountered in the months prior. And what we're asking to do is ask residents weigh in on their priorities. And it's a chance to sort of carve up the pie and see how would you invest all this money in a given year or all this money over the course of the tax. And I assure you that the budget tool is a lot more interesting than this image here. But what you can do is go on the website and play around with the numbers and move them around to see how you would allocate funding. And the final expenditure plan is not going to look like this. It will be crafted, I'm told, based on a lot of the information gathered during this process. Basically, the budget survey asks residents, with new funding, how much should go where? And the most important part is that we want to hear from the community. We want everyone in San Mateo County to take this budget challenge and try it out. And it's a little fun to move the numbers around. But if you can't get on the website for any reason, you can attend one of our town hall meetings. As I mentioned, there's one going on right now. We have one on the coast side in Half Moon Bay on the 24th, and one in South County at the Fair Oaks Community Center. You can go and sort of do in person what you would do in the budget challenge. It's a lot less complex, but I was at the North County one in Daly City. It was actually a very fun and lively group, and there's a little bit of rivalry in terms of who wanted to spend what where, but it was very instructive. And this is where you folks on the city council and city staff come in handy. I noticed on the website today you have Get Us Moving in big logo on the website. Mm-hmm. So please help us get the word out about Phase 2 and what's going on, and remind people to get out there and to share their concerns. I mean, speak up now. And that concludes my very first presentation.
Great.
Yeah, thank
Good
you.
job, Matthew. Any council questions for Matthew?
Yeah, you're doing a great job, man. I really am impressed with the outreach. It's, that's the way to do it. So keep it up.
Thank you. It's been unbelievably thorough. It's all hands on deck. Any other questions I could relay back to the team?
Yeah. Not yet.
So we're looking for November as the
Yes.
election date. Okay.
I'm told both boards might look at it in July, but don't quote me on that. It could be. We're saying summer, so keep your eyes peeled.
And so it's going to be a 3-year measure rather than a really long-term one?
A 30.
Oh, it's going to be 30 years.
30 years.
Okay, so not, okay.
3 would be very brief.
30.
One point you said 3 years. So.
Oh, my apologies. Sorry,
Yeah, I was
30.
like, whoa,
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
30.
10%.
Yeah, whatever. Anything else?
Nope.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alrighty. Moving on. Item C, which is a presentation regarding Bayland soil processing, and this is in response to initially an article that was written in the Chronicle recently about contaminated soil, the radioactive soil coming to Brisbane. And they specifically named out Recology. I know Recology representatives are here tonight. Not for that, of course, but...
I'm not really hearing you very well, Clark.
Huh?
I'm not hearing you very well.
Oh. Anybody else hearing me okay? No. Oh, really? Okay. Well, anyway, this is in regards to a Chronicle newsletter stating that radioactive material had come to Brisbane, and they named Recology, but staff has done some extensive investigation and is going to do a presentation regarding that and our soils operations. So our Public Works Director, Randy Bro, is going to start off. And we will take questions and stuff afterwards. So.
Sounds great, sir. Thank you. Thank you for letting me have the microphone again. So as you mentioned, well, and I probably ought to say right from the beginning, there aren't going to be any jokes this time because this isn't a laughing matter. Although I guess some people could very generously look at this as an extremely dark comedy. I'm not sure how some of these events occur, but as you mentioned, much of the concern came about because there were some news stories and there was some speculation that either toxic or radiologically contaminated material was brought into Brisbane into either recology. There was some speculation that it went down to the soils processing facility or into Brisbane recycling. So, of course, we immediately reached out to the property owner and the operators, and we were able to get statements from Bea and Soils Processing indicated they haven't received any material from the Hunters Point Naval Shipyard since 2010. And then, of course, we went deeper into investigation of the news article that came out April 21st. That article incorrectly listed that the material was delivered to Brisbane Recology. They listed an address, which is not Brisbane Recology, so Recology reached out to the reporter. They were able to get his source material, and that's listed in the information we had provided on the website. It turns out that the material did go to Brisbane Recycling Company, which is the asphalt concrete and concrete processing company out there. There was a bit of confusion going on out there. That operator's intake form listed that it had come from 3rd and Evans, but when we went back and challenged the owner of that company to dig deeper and to reach into the hauling company, because it was actually the hauler that provided that address, he reached back to his contractor, and they were able to confirm that the product had indeed come from Hunters Point Naval Shipyard. And at that point in time, the operator of Brisbane Recycling reached out to the Department of the Navy and said, hey, tell me what the heck the source of this material is and what did you guys send to my facility. And that letter that came from the Base Realignment and Closure Office of the Department of the Navy in San Diego is also on our website. They are stating that what that material was it was a durable cover material that was placed over some soil in what they refer to as Parcel B2. It was placed in 2013, and then in 2015 they removed 40 tons of it so that a remediation contractor could go in and deal with some petrohydrochemical remediation issues that were underneath that soil. So that's what they're stating. They're claiming that it was not having any radiological contamination attached to it. So, that's not completely satisfactory. You have to wonder how these things are going on. I think you have to be very concerned when you hear that 2 employees of the environmental inspection team out there are in federal prison. That's certainly very alarming. What we're trying to do, there's a number of steps we're doing right now. We're continuing to work with Brisbane Recycling because we want to understand how and why the source of that asphalt was incorrectly listed. We don't get that, so that gentleman, the president of that company, has an appointment with me next week, and we're going to sit down and make sure we better understand that and make sure as we consider re-extending his permit, which we renew every 6 months, that we have some tightened up requirements in there so we don't have an issue like that again. Some of the big courses of action I think we're taking, the first one is we're going to do a record search on Brisbane Soils Processing. We are entitled to do that under the Memorandum of Agreement, and what we want to do is go back during the time period. If you look at the reporter's source of material was a document called a Report Action Contract. It's something that has to be produced under the federal CERCLA law, which is when you deal with Superfunds. And so what we want to do is look at when material was exported during that time frame. We want to go back through BSP's records and confirm for ourselves that that material was not delivered to the soils processing site. And the firm that we're going to use to do that is Camp Dresser and McKee. That's a civil and environmental engineering firm. They've worked with us previously on Brisbane Soils Processing. They monitored the soil management plan that they put into effect. They've gone out there and audited them previously. So we've got a lot of confidence that they'll be able to go out there and do that. The second thing we want to do is ascertain a way to analyze the existing soil. I mean, we just think, obviously, because people in one case, and I don't want to say that was just everywhere, but certainly we have at least one data point that somebody provided the incorrect source name and location for a set of material. So we think we probably also need to go out and check the material throughout the bottom 2/3 of the site where the soils processing look at, particularly when it comes to radiological contamination. So we've reached out to Dr. Lee, who we have under contract under a separate issue, and I'll talk about that at the end of my presentation. And we really want to work with him to get a sense of how can we analyze at and near surface type materials to see if we have any radiological contamination out there. And in line with that, the other thing we also intend to do is that when we get to the point where they start exporting material again, one of the things that I'm not aware of any landfill putting in as a requirement is the testing for radiological contamination. But because of this site and because of its potential for having received such, we're going to put that requirement in there, that's going to have to be tested. So Right now, we think we'll be able to capture the at and near surface contamination if there is any, and then we'll put in place a plan and measures to capture it once they start moving it. This is the third item. The city attorney is reaching out to both the U.S. attorney to determine their case and to talk about it with him and to see if there's any information that the whistleblowers may have provided to him. And we're also reaching out to the whistleblowers' attorneys, or we, the proverbial we being Michael Roush, is going to reach out to both sets of those people and see if there's any information that they are willing and able to share with us so that we can try and determine were there any other deliveries that we didn't know about that we should know about. And then the last item that's working on is, and we've heard this before, and I know that the BB-CAG discussed this the other night, there's an ongoing discussion about unifying the western side of the site. So right now on the western side of the site, it's divided into Operable Unit 1 and Operable Unit 2. OU1 on the north is presently under the environmental remediation control of the Department of Toxic Substances Control. The OU2 on the south is under the control of the San Francisco Bay Division of the Regional Water Quality Control Board. And there are many people, myself included, who think that it would be a better idea to put both of those operable units under the control of one party, and that one party, probably the most capable to deal with that, would be DTSC. We've had some ongoing conversation about how that happens. It actually, my present understanding, is that the person who has to make that application is the property owner themselves. But I think we're willing to ask the property owner to do that and to work with them, and I don't know why they would object to that, but we'll certainly have ongoing conversations about them. I did mention that I was going to talk to you about Dr. Lee's involvements, and this is unrelated to the Hunters Point Naval Shipyard material, other than the little work we're asking him to do to see if there's a way to check for at or near service radiological contamination. But the property owner has filed a remedial action plan with DTSC for Operable Unit 1, and we've engaged Dr. Lee. He's under contract with us. And the point of bringing Dr. Lee on board is so that the city can have an advocate that is reviewing materials that DTSC produces while they're in draft format before they get published, so that we can make sure that we have an outside professional appear looking at it and looking after our best interests and doing what we can to make sure that the product is actually not only satisfactory, it doesn't meet standards, but it's actually the very best that it can be, and that it's very best for the future uses that we're anticipating out there. And with that, I'll be happy to take questions.
Okay, council questions? Anybody have questions for Randy? Yeah, Terry, go ahead.
When you talked about future movement and soils testing of future movement, you mentioned for export, but we would want to make sure, I would want to make sure that it's export or just movement on the site that is when soils get tested, because we don't know what in the prior years before we had some control over it, that might be prudent to do, not just on exportation but movement within the site.
That's a fair and appropriate comment, ma'am.
Madison?
No. Thanks, Terry.
Yeah. So, Randy, you said that Dr. Lee is he's going to be putting together, I guess, some kind of game plan that helps us to identify radioactive material in the remediation action plan. So that would be part of the plan.
So two pieces there, sir, and I'm sorry, I probably conflated them a little bit. So in regards to the potential material that came from Hunters Point, we're asking him to put together a plan to identify at or near surface radiological contaminated material there. And that's on the former municipal solid waste landfill east of the track. On the northwest side of the track where OU1 is, that's where we have him involved working with DTSC as they're developing a remedial action plan at the request of the property owner.
Okay, because I know that it was proposed that soil from the east side would then go over to the west side as part of the remediation of OU1 and OU2. So we would have some kind of game plan in place to test that soil. I mean, we're assuming that the soil that's currently in those mountains of dirt is clean, but it might not be. So, as part of Dr. Lee's input to ensure us that there will be some kind of testing as the soil goes from one side to the other, if that is the case?
Well, that's actually the ideal scenario. I mean, that's the scenario we would prefer, is that they take the soil from the east side and move it to the west side. At one point in time, the property owner had proposed another plan. They wanted to start another intake operation to start moving soil in on OU1. We don't care for that for a number of reasons. We're not interested in having another processing facility or storage facility like that, and we'd like to see those dirt mounds go down so that they get back within the volumes that we had imagined within the memorandum of understanding. And I think that's actually probably also the ideal scenario for us, because when that movement's being done internally and being received on one of our sites, very easy for us to
more control
the radiological checking
Absolutely.
Controls. And yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Randy.
Karen?
I want to break this down and really try and bring this down to the lowest common denominator, which is trust at this point. My trust level is pretty low at this point. And with all the information that has come forward, regardless of whether it's factual or it's made up, or we've got whistleblowers who are now in jail, so obviously some things were not okay. We can put all the pieces in place to make it look like we're doing our best job. But I'm going to use a phrase, and I'm probably going to use this phrase probably for the next 10 years. We need to trust but verify. And what I mean by trust but verify is we trust the information we're getting from sources we think we can trust. But we independently as a city need to verify by any means possible that the information that we've been given is factual. We're in a position now where, all of a sudden this bombshell has dropped in the Bay Area, and we're working with a completely different set of facts than we were even 6 months ago. So how we present that to the people of Brisbane, I think is really important. I think we need to simplify what we're doing. We need to make sure that how we're presenting it really makes complete sense at a very base level, because right now it's this wave of sometimes nonsense, non-facts, and who knows what that's been landed on all of us. And I'm sitting here as somebody who's lived in this town for many, many years, and safety is my first priority no matter what we do. And I'm extremely grateful that we have all agreed that Dr. Zana and her husband, Dr. Fred Lee, are the people that we're trusting. But, trust but verify has got to be, how we move forward. And I'm not really sure what that means. I'm speaking from the heart, because I don't know how else I can do that right now. And all this stuff that's come forward is totally incredible to me.
Okay. Terry?
That brings up one thing for me, that we know that soil, contaminated or not contaminated, went somewhere. And we know that some soil was circumvented the system. Have we gotten a report from the Navy or from, God forbid, Tetra Tech, where the soil, where most of the soil, the disclosed soil, actually went to what facilities? And so it would be nice to know that, because then at least the people who are researching it could see what discrepancies on their receiving is versus the logs going out and where the manifests are lacking. So I'm not sure if we have a report on where they were meant to send this soil.
So I do have the source data that the reporter used. So that was in a particular report action contract that covered a certain time period. There were a couple of dozen different delivery sites that were there. But again, the challenge is, does that match up at the delivery site? Because, for instance, in the one case that was related to Brisbane, that report says 40 tons of AC from parcel B2 going to 5 Beatty. But then when said material gets delivered to Brisbane Recycling, the hauler listed source as Third and Evans.
Yeah, which is incorrect.
So reconciling that nonsense is the hard part. And that's the thing that speaks to what Councilmember Cunningham was saying. It becomes a giant trust issue, and trust is a bank account. The only problem is it's not even deposits and withdrawals. Once you make a big withdrawal like that, I think the psychologists tell you it takes like somewhere between 13 and 20 deposits of good faith back to get you to the point where you believe people again. And that's in some ways it's unfortunate, because I tend to believe that the majority of people are good people. I don't think that 85% of the world are bad people, but certainly when you get a couple of really bad people doing really bad things, it makes us say, wow, we need to look really closely at everything that's going on out there to make sure the problem wasn't even more widespread.
Mm-hmm. And has that list of soil receiving facilities been made public, where we know where
it's a public document, so.
Where the soils went, and is that something we can make available to the council or to the public as far as
sure as
access
as
to
much
that?
as you want to do with it? Sure, if you want the full report, I don't see why we wouldn't give it to you.
Okay.
You could get it from the Navy if you wanted. I'm happy to give it to you. I've got
Well,
it.
it'd be much easier if you gave it to me than getting it from
I'd be
the Navy.
delighted to do that.
And then the one thing that to follow up on, saying that UPC has filed a remedial action plan with the Department of Toxic Control. What we heard in the meeting that we had at the BB-CAG last 2 nights ago, I guess,
Right.
was that has not been reviewed yet, and so they had no report on what it includes.
And I don't think they've actually filed the RAP. And again, it's a long, complex process. So what they've actually done is looked at a gap analysis. I believe that's the first thing they've submitted. So when you use the term we're filing a RAP, I use it in the sense that we are beginning the preparation of a RAP. And the first thing you do before you begin a remedial action plan is you look at the gap in data analysis. You look at what data you have out there and what sort of contaminants did you have, and do we think we have enough information? And I've never seen one come up where it says, oh yeah, we got all the information we need, it's fine, let's go ahead. It inevitably comes back with, well, no, we think that this area and these contaminants, you need to go looking for all of those before you can even tell, because you have to fully understand the problem before you can develop an appropriate solution. So that's what they're doing right now, and it's the gap analysis that has not even been reviewed by the DTS staff,
Okay.
DTSC staff.
And then on the consideration of wanting to have the controlling agency or the oversight agency be one versus a combination of agencies and this is probably a question for the city attorney. This came up at the BB-CAG meeting, and while this is a presentation and not a public hearing, I did let the members of the BB-CAG know that I would suggest to the council, if we need that we bring it back as an agenda item to see if that is of the council's pleasure to do. And would this be the time to just give that information, ask that question if we want to look at it as a council, or would we rather have staff do it first?
I thought you were going to ask whether or not this was the appropriate forum for you to give that direction, and I was going to answer the question yes. Then you sort of changed the question on me there.
Well, I didn't know if we could ask that question now because it's not part of an official agenda, or and we would just get this in direction from council that we would want to look at it. So I'm asking whether I can ask that question or not.
You can ask that question.
Okay.
Ask that
So,
question, Terry.
Again, at the BBCAG, we talked about whether it would be better to have one agency or multiple agencies looking at the site. It was of the BBCAG's opinion, for the most part, that they would prefer to have it under one agency, and that, again, as staff reports, that the easy way to do that is to have the responsible party responsible for the cleanup ask for that oversight. That's something that one of the members of the public did ask members of UPC during that meeting, and they were non-committal, which I don't blame them for not saying, yeah, sure, or no. But it is something that would be the easier way to get that done, and would take reaching out from the council and staff to make that formal request. So if the
Yeah, I'd like to see it
council,
on an agenda. Absolutely. I totally.
Well, I don't know. Do we have to put it on the agenda, Michael, or we?
If the council wants to put it on the agenda for discussion, it could, but if you want to give the direction tonight for staff to pursue that, I'm okay with that as well.
Okay.
I would like to
choice.
give that direction, but
Me too.
I'm not sure I agree with that, only because if we've got one body, DTSC, making the recommendations, at this point, my trust level across the board is very low. I'm not sure that I want just one group of people making a recommendation. That might be naive of me, but at this point, given the external and extraneous stuff that's going on, coming in from every different direction with Hunters Point and the Navy and Tetra Tech and all this stuff that is beyond BS, and I'm not going to pull back on my thought process on that. I'm not sure I trust any one group of people to be the person giving us information. For me, I'm like, we got to open this up again and have information coming in from various groups that may or may not be swayed by one group or another. I mean, I've seen so much nonsense in the last few years about so many different things, and this being one of them, I think is super critical to the welfare of the people in our area. So I'm not sure I trust DTSC either.
Well, the one thing, and it's not that that's the agency that would make all the recommendations.
Okay.
Right now, basically, OU1 is under control of DTSC.
Correct.
OU2 is under the Regional Water Control Board. And so it's getting continuity throughout the site. Not that the Regional Water Control Board wouldn't have input on what DTSC was doing.
In OU1?
In OU1
Okay.
and OU2.
Okay.
But we would want one lead agency continuous throughout the site so that we're not starting at square one and not looking at the research and the things that have been found in OU1 or on Schlag. And that's sort of the reason that BBCAG had that wish, was DTSC is familiar with the Schlag log site, the contamination there,
Right.
how the water, the contaminants have spread down into OU1, and would have some continuity there with the entire site. As we heard in prior BBCAG meetings, we had members of the water board talking about the tank farm, and the members of the landfill, people representing the landfill, one saying the toxins were coming from the tank farm, one saying the toxins were coming from the landfill, and we had two different agencies butting heads, so to speak, on who was at fault. And so it would be good, in a respect, to have one agency have the continuity of the site instead of breaking it up into regions. But again, if you have concerns, I think this is something we may want to look at as a council and then give direction to staff, because it's something that I'm not as advised on it as some of the other members of the BBCAG.
Well, just to clarify on that part too, Terry, we're asking for DTSC for OU2 only, because the landfill would still be under regional water quality control.
Right. No, I understand.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to get it convoluted too bad, so we're just asking for OU2 to be combined with OU1 with one lead state agency. And Karen, I certainly understand your concern, because,
Right.
Madison and I've had this concern also, when we had our meeting with our state legislators. But the deal is it's either one state agency or another state agency
Takes the lead.
Doesn't matter what you think or what you feel, is they
Okay.
have regulatory authority, and it doesn't matter what we think or do, it's either one or the other, and that's really it.
So we're thinking DTSC has the better hand at this point.
We're thinking that, and it's hard to just draw a dotted line across and say, from here up, you're responsible, from here down, you're not.
I get it.
And that's why they wanted to make it more of a continuous parcel.
Okay. Not happy, but I'm okay.
Okay. Madison?
Terry pulled the words right out of my mouth. No, I think it's smart for us to have one lead agency. I think DTSC is, to me that makes the most sense, to just have them be in charge of, looking at both OU1 and OU2 and how we remediate that. And, keep in mind, we've hired Dr. Lee for a reason, and he will be consulting us in this process. On the other hand, we can't exactly tell them how to do their job. They are the agency, and this is what they do. They're the experts, and I think we most certainly can give input. But at the end of the day, that's kind of one of the hard things about this process, is that that's their purview, that's their jurisdiction, that's what they do, and we aren't experts in remediation. So I think that we need to obviously be paying attention. We need to be watching things closely. We have our experts that are going to be crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and we can most certainly give input. And to me, I think that DTSC, it makes sense for them to be the ones that look at both parcels. So I would be happy to move forward with asking staff to communicate with UPC and see if that's something that they're interested in asking for. I don't think that we need to bring this back to another meeting, but if certainly we feel, other council members feel like it needs more discussion, I'm happy to do that.
Okay. All right. Well, I agree with my colleagues on this, so I guess the direction to staff is to communicate with UPC. What our wish is to combine both OU1 and OU2 under the jurisdiction of DTSC. Is that?
That's crystal clear, sir, and since UPC's note taker is sitting awfully close to me, I imagine they'll have it before the night is too late.
Okay. Are there any other questions for staff regarding the presentation before I start asking the community to come forward? I will, Clara, but okay, no more. Dana, you want to? I'll get you in a second, Clara. Dana's been waiting here a while.
So thank you, Mr. Magoo. We are not comforted by a report that one falsified document from a meager cursory research to date equates to a byline of no contaminated material brought to Brisbane. I think you should look at the language that you're using and correct that. You may say none discovered to date, maybe, but you cannot materially say that no contaminated materials have been brought to Brisbane. We are not going to accept that of the one confirmed falsified importation from Hunter's Point that you then claim that there's no contaminated materials brought here. Do you have proof? And what about the quarry? If you don't think there's a problem, you're not going to do anything. And that's why I have a problem with this statement. We expect better of our elected officials. What are you doing to protect the public? What are you doing to protect the people driving along 101, kicking up the dust for miles? I saw that today. There was a trailer that had double wide tires that exceeded the width of the lane that the rest of us use. So they were just kicking up dust all the way down 101. Are you taking any legal action? I think asking questions of the people for whom admission of any guilt is not the way I would approach it. You are, as representatives of a full township of people and workers, of residents and workers, are you going to be a friend of the court on the class action lawsuit that is unearthing these issues of the responding to the violations? Are you getting any testing done to be certain, or creating any new protections for Brisbane? What has the county done on this matter? I contacted Greg Shirley at the San Mateo Department of Environmental Health, Cal Recycle, and he's not aware of the importation of these soils as a recycling program, and was unable to connect me with anybody who has jurisdiction over this potential rogue radioactive soil moving scheme. We need better representation than a casual inquiry to the Navy. We need better investigations, more thorough reporting. And at the very least, UPC should not, or whomever the parties are, should not be allowed to cut into the vegetation from the sides of the mounds because they need to do a better job of keeping the dust down. Thank you.
Claire?
Claire Johnson, good evening. I want to thank you for all that you are doing. Dana had good suggestions for doing more, but all that you are doing on this issue. And I had just had 2 points. One is concerning the RAP that the city engineer and Councilmember O'Connell spoke about. The reason why I got up here and take your time is because I think it's important to understand that the DTSC first learned that the UPC voluntarily wanted to go to the residential level of cleanup in December, not long ago really, and that there are recognized to be data gaps, as Terry mentioned, and it's understand they have to investigate those. They have to investigate them, analyze them, make a determination, and then a RAP would be, something that they would be considering. So the only reason I thought this was important was there's a little bit of an implication that it might be fast. This isn't going to be fast. You're talking about a year, more than a year, 2 years. It just is. So if people think it's going to be fast, who knows what you find when you start looking.
Yeah, we
that was the first.
We don't think it's going to be fast.
You didn't think it was going to be fast. Well, I'm glad. I guess I'm the one who didn't understand. Yeah. But the other issue is, I've been concerned about the measurement of the soil, because I've been told before how it's just like so much of a volume of soil per ton, and I don't understand how they can adequately determine where, if you're looking at things from width, height, and and breadth that where something is, and I would just suggest that you require that they use the best technological means to determine that, so you know what you're testing, what's been tested, what you're moving, that it really needs to be, there needs to be a much more rigorous way of doing this than I think that's being done now. I think if you check into it, it's kind of a primitive way to do it, and how can it be that reliable? You think when you excavate, everything just falls into place? I don't think so. And so I think it's important enough when you have that much soil. And I would just also point out that you had a soil plan that was discussed here that doesn't relate to all this we've been talking about Hunter's Point, but all of the material that was brought in before, I think it's in 2010, I don't know what month, has to be tested because the Regional Quality Board determined that there weren't rigorous enough testing protocols in place then. So you have this testing you're talking about now, and you have that testing. So it would be very helpful if it were made rigorous to figure out what has and what hasn't been tested using a three-dimensional grid and equipment that would help you measure where you were in space. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Clara.
Thanks.
And Randy, I know we had a meeting with DTSC, so I guess to clarify, I did tell Clara, we don't expect this to be like an overnight deal. So they gave an idea that this is going to take a while, right?
I believe that the project manager from DTSC thought that her earliest estimate for even having the data gap done was 6 months from now. And probably realistically not looking at a wrap for, Clara's point on, I think it's 18 months to 2 years before they'd have a wrap.
Yeah, okay. Michelle?
Michelle Salmon, Brisbane resident. I've been asking about this for literally months and years, about monitoring what is going on out there with the dirt and where the dirt's coming from. I've requested to have manifests. Oh, we don't have manifests. I requested manifests for what's going on right now at the quarry. Oh, that's the county's jurisdiction. No, it's partly under our jurisdiction. I remember in 2006 when we had the no quarry housing, Brisbane was the responsible party for checking the manifest of what went in and out of the quarry. And I am really gravely concerned, and yes, you've addressed this one specific incident that was in the newspaper that implicated the wrong company and, the asphalt. But if you go back and you look at the history of cover-ups from the Navy and the amount of nuclear material and radioactive material that they have improperly disposed of for the last 70 years, we have serious issues here that we need to really look into. They've done everything from, dump live radioactive material at the Farallones, buried it on Treasure Island, buried it at Hunter's Point, and you cannot tell me that they did not bring any of it to Brisbane when it was an active dump out there. And so it's ironic to say that the soils processing egregious error of, where the dirt's coming from and no manifest is icing on the cake. But it is, in a way, poisonous icing on a poisonous cake. And so as we embark on this process with determining whether the dirt that's above the level of where it was in 1984, how much of that is contaminated and where it came from and what kind of contamination is there, radioactive or VOCs or, whatever, plus what lies beneath. And that hasn't been tested for radioactivity. A lot of the things that are now coming to light with what the Navy did in terms of disposing of waste materials and Bethlehem Steel and all the other companies that were in this industrial area, I think that we have it really incumbent upon us to make sure that we explore that thoroughly, as those things will come back to haunt us, including even the amount of lead that's been deposited along 101 from when we had leaded gasoline. And, that's been proven to be really detrimental to human health, in particular to children. I'm very concerned about what's going on now with the dirt being imported into the quarry, and I've asked the city manager about it. Please, can we look into this? You know, it really is. It's right here. It goes through Brisbane. It's our responsibility, and the amount of dust I'm on speed dial. Dick knows my name at the Bay Area Air Quality Control Board. Came down the freeway the other day, and here's wafts and wafts of dirt blowing over this freeway. Oh, well, it was a windy day and they didn't get the watering trucks out in time. Bullshit. I'm sorry. You know it's going to be a windy day. Take care of it. And so I don't know where it stops, but, there was a lot of pollution in the Bay Area. Hunters Point, Treasure Island, the stuff they dumped at the Fairlawns. We have incredibly high breast cancer rates in the Bay Area, and now it's becoming really clear why. And we need full disclosure, not just the information that we got from one report that the reporter found, but full disclosure and tying all these pieces together. And Brisbane's a small entity to demand that, but every single city who received dirt, every single city or every single facility that was involved needs to get together and have a class action about it. And I know Randy talked about testing the at or near surface contamination for radiological issues, but there's a lot of dirt there that's been piled there for a long time, and the half-life of the radioactive materials is a lot longer than our lifetime, and so we really need to dig deep. Pardon the pun, but we really need to dig deep to make sure that that's safe and that we haven't been further contaminated after what was originally dumped there. And as far as the data gaps, I mean, stuff for chemicals is a huge data gap that wasn't addressed in the EIR, and that's in OU too, So we have a lot of work ahead of us, and I know you guys are under a huge amount of pressure from the state and from the people who know nothing about what lies beneath there, and who think, oh, open field, brownfield, let's build, But we have a responsibility to the future. And I don't want to see it, you don't want to see people poisoned. So I know you'll do your job the best you can, but we really need to look at all of it, including what's going on at the quarry right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Hey, anybody else wish to address the council on this? I see. Okay, not seeing any takers. All right, so let's move on to the consent calendar.
I have one more comment.
Oh, go ahead.
And this is actually, Terry can elaborate on this if she wants to, but this is something that she brought up at the BBCAG meeting, and I think it's a really good point. I'm not an expert on testing soil, so I don't know the means of how you go about that. But one thing that Terry did suggest is that anytime soil is moved, because there's been, discussion that soil is going to get moved to OU1 from the dump area, from the mountain of dirt. And she had mentioned it's really important because we may not be able to test all of what's in that soil right now because it's all compacted on top of each other, but anytime soil is moved anywhere, then all those truckloads need to be tested to ensure as you start, moving the soil off of the site, then I don't know in soil testing like how deep you can go, but that obviously we know that hill is quite large at this point, so it may be smart for us to implement something that really takes a look at any time soil is moved, that we make sure that it is tested so that everyone has peace of mind and we can catch something right away just in case something was imported and it was marked incorrectly. And who knows, with what's been going on, it's a possibility that that's happened and somebody just mismarked where the original site that dirt came from was. So I think that's one way that we might be able to address some of this in terms of testing. So I don't know. That was your idea. I didn't know if you were going to say it. So
I briefly touched on it earlier, during Randy's report. And again, there's no way we're going to sift through it all and say what's safe in that dirt at this point. There's no way to check it all that I know of. We don't have a magic wand. So we just have to be proactive going forward with what we've got on the ground right now.
Right, and that's what staff is putting together. I mean, we got 2 consultants on board, plus the data requests that we're getting from the Navy. They're going to compile everything, and it's going to create questions. So we got to start somewhere, and so I guess addressing to you, Michelle, is that we are going through that process, and it's going to be very time consuming, and this isn't something that we really expected to happen, and the landfill area where the Brisbane dirt soil operation is, that they changed operators in 2010, was it, Randy? 2010?
Yes, sir, 2010.
Yeah, and there we started putting measures in place as to them tracking what's coming in, and there's a whole operating procedure that we've put together, and that's kind of been a living document in a sense, and looks like we're going to be adding more to that. And we've had environmental consultants, who do the audits on that when we request it, so that's part of it. But the stuff that came in prior to 2010, Clara, as you indicated, has not been profiled, and so we don't know. And so, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen, in regards to that. Okay.
Even after 2010, I observed several trucks going in and out of there that didn't even have license plates on them. So it makes me very distrustful of whatever records they do have. And I do think we should be have a regular third-party testing of all the soil that gets moved, because their records are obviously not accurate. I don't want to say they're falsified, but they're not accurate. And, it was partly me calling the city and then the city calling the highway patrol to have them set up things to check to make sure trucks going in and out of there were at least registered, because they weren't. And so, that calls into question everything, the lack of distrust for their records. Yeah. And so, doing a record search, yes, it's tedious, but it's not going to be accurate.
That's part of having Dr. Lee come in and put together a plan, okay? So, Randy had addressed that at the beginning, so everybody seems to kind of skip over that and want to say...
No, I know. It's just that,
okay.
the distrust.
I think just...
No, I get it, yeah.
People are nervous and concerned, and, I want to apologize for the title of that article. I understand that it was misleading. I don't... I'm certainly not that optimistic where I think that there's no contaminated soil that's been brought to Brisbane just because that one load was identified as being clean. But I understand that the title of that article was misleading. So I speak for myself when I say that, I share those concerns, and I know that it's a priority for the rest of the council to make sure that this is very, very detailed, very thorough, to make sure that this site is getting cleaned up and we're not just spreading the problems around. And so, this was brought up at the BB-CAG by somebody else who felt that article title was misleading. And so I apologize that happened. But just because that one truckload of soil or that asphalt that came in wasn't identified as being problematic doesn't mean that we are then just writing off that the problem doesn't potentially exist. So.
No, and that article, I mean, in all fairness, was to address
right.
The San Francisco Chronicle article, and that was what that was really for, not to dismiss everything. It's to date what we've come up with thus far, and that's really it. It's to date, and that's one of the problems. That sometimes I've had a lot of parents come up to me, mostly mothers, that were freaked out. That God, we got all this radiological material. Well, we need to find out information, and that's why we put that early. As early as we can, even though not everything is there, and so we know how it works. Sometimes you get pounded over every little word, So that's the whole point of what the article was to address that one situation. Is not everybody wants to pick every little word apart. So it's a difficult balance sometimes, and it's an ongoing issue, and we know that, and. I've been meeting with staff on a weekly basis in regards to this. And this isn't something that, we expected to be meeting on. And, it's sucking up a lot of staff times, too, with everything else that we got going on. So, we take it serious. It is serious. It's a serious situation, so.
Sorry, I turned myself off. One of the things that Dana brought up, and I don't know if we have any information. She asked about a friend of the court joining some lawsuit. I don't know of any lawsuit, and maybe staff can bring that back to us and get more information of what Ms. Dilworth is talking about on that. And then also on the quarry that was brought up by a couple speakers, and whether importation is happening at the quarry other than for their rock crushing, and perhaps we can follow up with the county as to what their permit currently is, and if anything has changed, because we've had a running, we're just working on an old permit at the quarry with no updates because of some future potential use. So if we can get information from the county on their quarry operations permit and get an update at a future council meeting, that would be very helpful, I think.
Okay.
I have a comment, Clark.
Okay.
So as staff has mentioned, so UPC is moving forward with the preliminary steps for the RAP for OU1. And so we're going to be looking at initially, what are the data gaps? Because we know that you can't move forward with remediating the site unless you know all the information. And thank goodness that we have Dr. Lee and his wife, being our advocates and making sure that all the things that need to be evaluated are there. I'm going to make an assumption that, the soil from the dump will eventually move over to the to OU1 and OU2. And I agree with Terry and with Madison, that each truckload, or whatever Dr. Lee and his wife recommend, how we evaluate that, to determine not only just the regular contamination that exists at the site, but also for radioactivity.
I think we're all in agreement.
No, but what I want to say, though, is, you had your opportunity to talk about it, Clark, so I just wanted to say that I'm on board with this. But, you made me lose my thought, Clark. But, we hired Dr. Lee and his wife to do that job for us. The soil that's at in those mounds, I don't trust it. I'm just going to say straight up, and so that's why every truckload that leaves that site has to be tested, and that we should make that a very strong point to Dr. Lee and his wife that you need to incorporate that into whatever final wrap occurs. And we just talked about, combining the whole site to be, overseen by DTSC, OU1 and OU2. So the western side. Maybe not tonight talking about it, but we might want to consider perhaps doing a wrap of the entire western side, so that if housing happens in OU1 and we want commercial in OU2, we want both to be happening at the same time, and we don't want to be have a delay in the commercial part, so just putting it out there for council consideration. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for letting me speak and not cutting me off.
Karen?
I'm done.
Okay. Everybody done?
Thank
All right. Now we're going to move on to consent calendars. Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve. Can I go? To approve items A through I.
Second.
Okay. A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, opposed? All right. Okay, that brings us into swearing in, which is administering oath of office to newly appointed city committee member. So, Daniel Carter, please come forward.
Woo.
Thank you.
I want to note that the spider that was there is already there. And that's a big spider, and he's made that commute during the whole speech. I took a picture of him earlier. He was on the other side of the antenna, and he's been here for the whole process. He probably needs.
If he starts
to turn in
coming
later.
down, you let me know.
He's the fly on the
That's
wall,
a big spider,
so to
I saw it
speak.
from- but he at least gave me something to do.
Like the one
He was trying to leave.
That's Randy's pet, by the way.
Is that
I actually named him, sir. Yes, he's been there long enough. I think he should have a
I
name.
can tell he has that long hair going on too. Like,
Oh no, it's right behind me.
all right.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me.
Okay.
I state your name.
I, Daniel Carter,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly
that
affirm
I will support and defend
I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California.
that I take this obligation freely
And I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion.
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
And I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter. Thank you.
Can we announce what committee or commission he's been
The
appointed
city,
to for the public?
Yeah,
That would be helpful.
City Arts Committee, so,
Public Arts Committee.
yeah.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan, for volunteering.
Congratulations.
It's actually a long process. Okay, that brings us to old business, which is item A, which is adopt resolution 2018-27 to become an associate member, excuse me, of the California Enterprise Development Association, JPA, and consenting to the inclusion of properties within the city's jurisdiction in Fig Tree Property Assessed Clean Energy, which is called PACE Financing Program. And staff, Terry, I guess you had some questions on this last time. The second time it's come before us. Have they been adequately addressed?
Yes, the concerns I had on resolution 2018-27 have been addressed.
Okay. Any other questions on this item?
No.
Anybody?
No.
No.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 2018-27 to become an associate member of the California Enterprise Development Association, JPA.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, very good. All right, item B under old business, which is adopt resolution 2018-28 to become an associate member of the Golden State Finance Authority and consenting to the inclusion of properties within the city's jurisdiction in the Community Facilities District number 2014-1 and adopt resolution 2018-29 to become an associate member of the Golden State Finance Authority and consenting to the inclusion of properties within the city's jurisdiction in the authority's property assessed clean energy PACE financing program. And Terry, you had questions on this one too. Have they been adequately addressed?
I did have questions on this one, and I thank staff for going the extra mile to explain some of it to me and to give a better understanding of what it is. I did have a conversation with our city attorney, and one thing that I want to be aware of is that, or the public to be aware of, is that this would be, something that would go on a property just like a enhanced financing district or streetscape or library fund or anything else that might be added to property taxes, and that we may want to make sure that on a large project we have adequate developer agreement to protect the property and the city from being overly burdened by some of these underlying taxes that would add to the properties, property taxes that future owners would be responsible for, so that we don't get overly burdened. That's not really a discussion for tonight, because that would need to be addressed in a future development agreement on any properties that we do that with, but I think that's something that we need to keep in mind to protect the city and their financial well-being on not overburdening properties with financing measures.
Okay, so you're cool with this, though?
I'm okay with this the way it sits, but I think that we need to discuss that when we get into development agreements.
Okay, and there is two resolutions in item B. So city attorney, could we do both resolutions at once? Okay. So I'd entertain a motion for resolution 2018-28 and 2018-29.
I'd make that motion.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? All right, very good. Thank you. All right, item C, which is authorize mayor to sign an agreement to award the new Brisbane Library Project construction contract for $6,329,000 to DL Falk Construction Incorporation and overrule the bid protest submitted by Agbayani Construction Corporation.
Good evening once again. I'll tell you what, as a city engineer, I'm really delighted with the bids that we got in here. Not only did we get a good suite of contractors, but when you bid a $6 million project and your three low bidders are within $100,000 of each other, you've got a really incredibly tight set of specs. So I have full confidence in the recommendation to the low bidder. A little bit disappointing that the fourth low bidder did file a formal bid protest. We were not terribly impressed with the reasons for their protests, so we have responded to them and let them know that we were going to ask the council to overrule them, and you see the reasons why in there. So we'd ask you to take those two actions this evening.
Council questions?
I don't.
I don't have any.
Okay. Madison?
I think it's not a question. I guess it's sort of a comment that it's interesting that the contractor who did the protest had the exact same issue with both the bidders as far as the technical reason why he wanted to protest those bids. Seems sort of like a form letter to me.
He's done this before.
It did.
Been down the track before.
Yeah, well, ma'am, there's actually no value in him doing it unless he can't disqualify everybody that was a lower bidder than him.
Yeah.
So
By $1 million.
not surprising that he would try and do it. It was, I admire his courage in attempting to get work for his employer, but I don't admire his rationale.
Works in San Francisco.
Maybe.
No, I'm saying it works in San Francisco.
Okay.
It works in San Francisco.
Yeah, that tactic.
Okay.
Okay, anybody from the community want to comment on this? Joe? No? Okay.
Well-
Entertain a motion on this.
I'll make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign an agreement to award the New Brisbane Library project construction contract for $6,329,000 to DL Falk Construction Company. Construction Incorporated, sorry.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, if you wouldn't mind, perhaps council member would be willing to entertain overruling
And
protest and doing that first, please.
Doing that. Oh, okay.
Yes, ma'am. We have to overrule the protest.
I see. I'll make a motion to overrule the bid protest submitted by Agbayani Construction Corporation.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And then
Okay, go ahead.
I will make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the agreement to award the construction contract to DL Falk Construction Incorporated.
I'll second.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We have a motion, a second, and a half of a third. So, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right. New business. Item A, San Bruno Mountain Watch Civic Garden Proposal.
Good evening once again. I am nothing more than the conduit by which Ariel gets to come up and speak to you about this proposal, so I'll turn right over to Ariel. Thank you.
How are you?
Very well, thank you. So, good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'd like to start in honor of the Week of Public Works. I'd like to start by thanking Public Works Director and City Engineer Randy Bro and Public Works Team Leader Joe Friars and Keegan Black, who provided a lot of feedback and guidance on this proposal. So thank you very much. I'd also like to thank City Clerk Ingrid Padilla for helping me throughout this process of submitting this proposal. I'm excited to present to you today the idea of a San Bruno Mountain Civic Garden and to ask for your support for this landscape that I really believe would be an expression of Brisbane's dedication to and love for San Bruno Mountain, dedication to the environment and love for San Bruno Mountain. And I don't want to throw out those words without actually, without having them lose their meaning. I really do believe that I've seen so much how much the city of Brisbane, the people here, and the staff care for the mountain and for the local environment. And so I want to start off with that, with seeing how I've been able to witness that firsthand. I appreciated the partnership with the City of Brisbane Parks and Rec last summer and being able to host the San Bruno Mountain Mountaineers Camp, where local youth were able to express their excitement and joy for being outside on the mountain through art and through exploration in a really lovely camp setting. Here we are making a self-portrait using mountain material to say that, we are part of the mountain is a part of us. I've also loved seeing how many people come out in the city of Brisbane to days like habitat restoration. This was here at Costaños Canyon recently in February for a really fun planting day to beautify the entrance of that canyon, which in the past had been all ivy. And also how excited people are and how much support the council, staff, and the people of Brisbane have expressed for not just being involved in restoring the environment directly on the greener parts of San Bruno Mountain, but also taking responsibility for the mountain's historical environments, like this valley in which we're in right now. At one point, a landscape of salt marsh and grassland and creeks, but today, an industrial park of warehouses and parking lots. But the support we received for creating a native plant garden to bring back some of the native plants that were once found in this valley and make it an educational space has been really inspiring, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm here today to talk. Here are some students from the local middle school who were able to partake in that project due to your support. So thank you again. And today I'm here to talk about a new education program that I've been really excited about doing this past year. I partnered with a teacher, Holly Rios, from middle school to submit a grant to the San Mateo County Office of Education, which we received last fall. And our idea was to engage local youth in the concept of native plants and have them learn about native plants on San Bruno Mountain through a whole suite of different angles. This angle was how native plants can be beneficial in habitat restoration. Here we have students who came out on what was a rainy day to plant nearly 500 host and nectar plants that benefit the endangered mission blue butterfly and the clippy silver spot at Buckeye Canyon. The other part of the project was to have students understand the environment in which native plants can grow, thrive or not thrive as much. And so we did an experiment in which we used garden beds at the school to create different types of soil mixes using sand to create different textures of soil and different experimental plots, teaching youth about the scientific process, and then having them be involved in setting up the experimental design, mixing the sand themselves, and also planting the plots with different species of mountain plants and taking measurements, quantitative measurements, to assess how those plants would grow over time. And so this was at the beginning of the experiment. The other idea was thinking about not just having the students think about plants in a quantitative fashion and thinking about their environment and their value as habitat, but also how native plants could provide value in an urban setting and thinking about native plants in a horticultural fashion. And so here we had students who, and this ties into the proposal that I'm going to talk about more in depth, but here we had students coming out to the Mission Blue Nursery, where we grow all plants native to San Bruno Mountain, and they were each given a data sheet to look at each individual plant, one student per plant, and analyze this plant through a whole suite of different qualitative traits. Those traits involved the growth, form, and shape, the texture and sensation they got from those plants, the color, the fragrance, and just in general, their general interest in it. Did it captivate them? Often we hear about native plants being used in projects, and people get the sense that it's beneficial, but we really wanted the youth to think about that more critically and more in depth, and think about what is it about these native plants and what value would they bring to our local cities. And so our idea was to have local youth analyze different plants that could be used in a horticultural setting like a city, and think about how these plants could be incorporated in a really important landscape in town. And so here we have a patch of earth as it was a few years back outside of City Hall, and as it is today, an empty slate, a perfect opportunity to implement a new landscape, and to implement that landscape that really shows Brisbane's dedication to the environment and their appreciation for San Bruno Mountain. Our idea is to plant in here a San Bruno Mountain civic garden composed of all native plants that are from the mountain, made to look in a way more formal, not a completely wild garden, but a garden that still fits in within the formal setting of a city hall, but at the same time really expresses on the ground how much the city of Brisbane cares for San Bruno Mountain and feels part of the mountain. And so here's the design that is proposed for this site. And it's also, apart from being a place where the students can see the plants that they're analyzing in a formal setting and be able to continue their analysis of whether these plants are worthwhile to use in the city. And those analyses could then go on to advise other projects around the city, in Crocker Industrial Park, around town. We also wanted them to see how the native plants from the mountain don't just have habitat value on the mountain, but have value for our infrastructure in the city. And so within that landscape, there's already a swale that was constructed to help manage stormwater. And so our idea was to plant that swale with native riparian plants that would be able to help the water slow down and infiltrate into the ground, and have students see that important function that plants can, play a role in. And the plants surrounding that, plants that really demonstrate the beauty of the mountain, that provide interest to people who are driving by, biking by, or walking by. And so this is the list of plants that is provided, about 208 in big landscape gallon sizes. So when they go in right away, they'll already have an immediate visual impact. That is a list that we'd like. I got some feedback from Public Works Team Leader Joe Fryer about replacing one plant, cow parsnip, because if it's broken, it could have a reaction that is allergic. So that plant has been replaced with a different species. But apart from that, all the plants there are the ones that we would like to install in that landscape. And then in the two tables below that shows the infill plantings, the ones that aren't perennial, but that could help with more ground cover and also bring in some annual plants that would provide interest and variety throughout the year. And with that, thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to take any questions. And whether about the project or the budget, we are requesting that the City of Brisbane provide funding to allow this full project to go through. We have some funding available from the San Mateo County Office of Education through the grant, but San Bernardino Mountain Watch is asking the City of Brisbane to provide nearly $10,000 to cover the full cost of the project activities.
Okay. Thank you, Ariel. Thank you. Council questions for Ariel?
I'll start. How long of program do you, I am assuming the planting is long term, but how long is your commitment with the San Mateo Board of Education for the learning process, the schoolroom activities?
The grant we received was for this school year, and so the grant will finish at this term. But I'm going to work with teacher Holly Rios if she's interested to continue this program, reapply for funding from that same funding source. It was the San Mateo County Math and Science Teacher Innovation Grant. So we'd want to apply for that again, or if that grant, look for other grants that could continue to support this program. It's my second year working with this middle school, and it's one of my favorite things to do is work with local youth on the mountain in the surrounding city. So I'm definitely committed to continuing this effort for the long term.
Thank you.
Madison, listen.
I don't have any questions, but I love it when you make presentations, Ariel. You're my favorite presenter. I just wish you could just do all of the presentations. You just have like this like such calm voice and so much like so many pictures. I love pictures. So keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you.
You're a good salesman.
Okay, I have some questions about the cost of the plants. These all look like, and we're spending taxpayer dollars if we're going to approve this, so I'm going to ask you money questions here. Each of these plants are $12 per plant, which I think is a little high, and that's probably your retail price from the nursery. So if we're going to spend taxpayer dollars, I would rather we get a discount if we're going to spend taxpayer dollars rather than have retail prices for things that we're going to approve to spend on our taxpayer money. I love the project, but I think you're asking us for a little too much at $12 per plant.
Does that include planting, though?
Well, we got volunteers, right? I was asking him right now.
Oh, sure. Well, I do appreciate the concern for making sure taxpayer money is spent in the most efficient way. I agree that it's very important, and I want this project to be very accountable, so I appreciate that feedback. When we do our pricing at the nursery, $12 per gallon plant is what we've deemed to be a pretty commonplace price among native plant nurseries. I believe if you go to somewhere like Home Depot or Lowe's, you might be able to see a gallon plant for like $9 or $8. Our costs as a nonprofit are different than such a large entity, and so I think our organization feels like $12 per gallon is a fair price that incorporates the special value of these plants.